A bare bulb swings like a slow metronome, counting down choices no one should ever have to make. Across the table, a man in a crisp uniform watches a woman as if she's a puzzle he's already solved. He has seen fear in every shape: sweat, trembling hands, pleading eyes. He is trained to believe that people, eventually, break. But this woman doesn't break. She sits with her shoulders straight, chin lifted, face calm in a way that feels wrong in a room like this. Not calm like resignation, calm like calculation. The officer leans forward. The paper in front of him is thick with names, some crossed out, some circled, some underlined, so hard the pencil has bruised the page. "Who are you really?" he asks, almost bored, as if the answer doesn't matter. It does. Because outside these walls, in a Europe carved up by checkpoints and wire, identities are weapons. A passport can be a lifeline. A whisper can be a death sentence. And the difference between a spy and a corpse is often nothing more than whether the wrong man believes the wrong story for long enough. Her name, at least the name history remembers, is Christine Granville. Born Christina Skarbek, Polish aristocracy by blood, and something far rarer by nature. A woman who understood that courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it is simply the refusal to look away. When war came in 1939 and Poland was crushed beneath steel, she didn't wait for rescue. She went looking for the fight. In the earliest, most chaotic years of the conflict, when Britain was scrambling to build an underground war from scratch, the Special Operations Executive, the organization created to set Europe ablaze, needed people who could cross borders like ghosts. People with nerve, languages, and the ability to smile while danger tightened around their throat. Christine fit like a key in a lock. She could travel where others couldn't, talk her way past men with rifles, slip across mountains and through occupied streets with messages that could shift operations and save lives. She carried secrets the way other women carried handbags, casually, dangerously, with no margin for error. And now, in this room, everything she has ever been, courier, agent, insurgent, survivor, has been reduced to a single question. Will she leave alive? The officer taps the paper with a finger. "We know you've been moving between contacts," he says. "We know you've been useful. But everyone is useful, until they're not." He says it like a proverb. Christine watches him. She doesn't rush. She doesn't argue. She doesn't plead. She lets silence settle on the table like dust. And in that silence, she chooses her weapon, because she has no gun, no dagger, no hidden cyanide capsule to bite down on before the next step of the interrogation. What she has is something smaller, something absurdly ordinary, a detail that shouldn't matter in a war. But war is not only fought with bullets and bombs. War is fought with psychology, with human weakness, with the split-second instincts that make even trained killers hesitate. Christine's hand drifts, almost lazily, toward her leg. An innocent movement, the kind that would mean nothing in any other room. But the officer notices. Of course he notices. He notices everything. His eyes narrow. "What are you doing?" She meets his gaze, calm, unflinching, and then she speaks. One sentence, measured carefully, like placing a match near dry tinder. "If you kill me," she says softly, "you'll be making a very expensive mistake." It's not a threat. Not exactly. It's an invitation, an implication, a hook in the mind of a man who prides himself on certainty. The officer's expression shifts just slightly. He has heard 100 threats. He has heard 100 lies. But this is different. Because she isn't trying to sound brave. She's trying to sound important. And in the machinery of occupation, importance is dangerous. A dead nobody is forgotten. A dead somebody can create paperwork, consequences, questions from higher up. Questions that can swallow careers. The officer watches her, weighing her like a coin. Christine knows what he's thinking. She can almost hear the gears turning behind his eyes. Who is she connected to? Who will come asking? What if she's bait? What if she's telling the truth? In that tiny crack of doubt, she reaches for the next move. The one that sounds ridiculous enough to be harmless. The silk stockings. Not as seduction, not as vanity, as evidence. As a prop in the most dangerous performance of her life. She shifts again, and the officer's hand tightens on the table. Don't, he snaps. Christine doesn't stop. She moves slowly, deliberately, forcing him to watch. Because the moment he looks away, if he looks away, she loses control of the room, and control is the only thing keeping her alive. She lifts her eyes to his and lets him see it. She's not begging. She's setting a stage. Outside, somewhere beyond these walls, names are hanging by threads. Networks are trembling, one arrest away from collapse. If she fails here, people will die. If she succeeds, the door might open, or it might open only long enough for the bullet. Christine inhales once, quietly, and prepares to gamble everything on an object no one would ever think to fear. Because in the next minute, she won't just be answering questions. She'll be rewriting what the Gestapo thinks it knows. And if she misjudges him by even an inch, this will be the last story she ever tells. Before this room, before this table, before the man in uniform who believes pain will make truth obedient. Christine Granville learned something essential. Men with power rarely fear strength. They fear consequences. She did not learn this in a classroom. She learned it on frozen mountain passes, in cafes thick with cigarette smoke, in border towns where a wrong accent could earn you a shallow grave. Long before the Gestapo ever wrote her name on paper, she had been practicing the only skill that truly mattered in occupied Europe. Reading people faster than they could read her. Christine crossed frontiers the way others crossed streets. Poland to Hungary, Hungary to France, France back again. Messages sewn into hems, microfilms hidden where no soldier thought to look. She spoke multiple languages fluently, but more importantly, she understood tone. When to flirt, when to challenge, when to appear harmless. Harmless was a costume. And like all good disguises, it worked because people wanted to believe it. The men who hunted resistance networks believed in categories: soldier, civilian, spy. Women, especially, were often filed away as background noise. Secretaries, wives, distractions. Christine exploited that blind spot ruthlessly, not by playing weak, but by playing normal. Normal women didn't cross mountain ranges in winter. Normal women didn't carry orders that could reroute entire resistance cells. Normal women didn't keep moving after friends disappeared. Christine did, and she survived because she never forgot one truth. Interrogation is a performance. Whoever controls the story controls the outcome. Now, sitting under the lamp, she watches the officer watching her. She notes what he notices, what he ignores, the way his jaw tightens when she mentions consequences, the way his eyes flick just for a second toward the door when she speaks of mistakes. That flicker tells her everything. The Gestapo were trained to assume guilt, but they were also trained to protect themselves. Careers mattered. Rank mattered. Being the man who executed the wrong prisoner mattered, especially if that execution triggered an investigation from Berlin. Christine leans back slightly. Not too much, enough to signal confidence without defiance. You see, she continues, her voice steady, people like me don't simply vanish. The officer scoffs. Everyone vanishes. She allows herself a thin smile, not mocking, knowing. Only when no one is counting, she replies. This is the game now. Not truth versus lies, but plausibility versus risk. She begins to build her story carefully. She hints at diplomatic ties, at communications that pass through channels he doesn't control. She doesn't claim power directly. That would sound foolish. Instead, she suggests reach, the kind that makes paperwork appear, the kind that makes superiors ask why no one was consulted. She is careful never to say a name he could verify immediately. Vagueness is protection. Precision is death. The officer circles the table slowly, a predator's habit. He wants her eyes to follow him. He wants dominance. Christine lets him have the movement, but not the focus. She keeps her gaze forward, as if his position in the room is irrelevant. It unsettles him. People about to die usually track every step. "You expect me to believe you're important," he says. "No," she answers. "I expect you to believe you might be wrong." That lands harder, because certainty is the backbone of authority. And doubt, just a grain of it, can fracture even the most disciplined men. He stops walking, and this mistake, he says, this terrible error I'd be making. How exactly would it come to pass? Christine waits. Timing matters. She lets the silence stretch just long enough for him to feel it. Then she gestures again, calmly, toward her leg. "My stockings," she says. The word hangs in the air, absurd and jarring. The officer laughs once. Sharp, dismissive. "Your stockings?" "Yes," Christine replies. "Silk." He frowns despite himself. Silk stockings in wartime were rare. Not impossible, but unusual, especially in occupied territory, where rationing stripped civilians down to the bare minimum. Silk meant access. Silk meant privilege. Silk meant someone was supplying you. Christine doesn't rush to explain. She lets his mind do the work for her. Let him ask the questions he doesn't want to voice. Who is dressing her? Why? What favors does she trade? Who would notice if she disappeared? She lowers her voice. "You can search me, confiscate them. But you should ask yourself first, why I'm wearing them at all." The officer's confidence begins to erode. Not collapse, erode. Like stone underwater. He turns away, irritated. He doesn't want to believe her. But he also doesn't want to be careless. And in this system, caution is a survival instinct. A knock comes at the door. Not loud, not urgent, but enough to break the rhythm of the interrogation. The officer hesitates. Christine keeps her face neutral. But inside, she feels the pressure building. This is the moment when her story either solidifies or shatters. If the wrong man walks in, if the wrong question is asked, if her bluff is called too early, the door handle turns, and Christine Granville holds her breath, not because she's afraid of dying, but because she's afraid the officer might decide it's safer to kill her before he finds out the truth. The door opens just wide enough to let uncertainty slip into the room. A junior officer leans in, murmurs something low and clipped. The words are too soft for Christine to catch, but the effect is immediate. The interrogator stiffens. His annoyance sharpens into calculation. This is the moment Christine has been waiting for, because nothing terrifies a bureaucratic killer more than interruption. He waves the junior officer away with a curt gesture and turns back to her, eyes colder now. "You are very confident for someone with no leverage." Christine inclines her head slightly. "Confidence isn't leverage," she says. "Expectation is." He studies her. The silk stockings have done their work, not as proof, but as permission for doubt. A question he didn't want to ask is now lodged in his mind. What if she matters? And so he tests her. "What would happen?" he asks slowly. "If I shot you right now?" Christine doesn't answer immediately. Not because she doesn't know, but because the pause forces him to imagine it. "A report," she says at last. Then another, then a delay. And eventually, someone will ask why a woman moving with diplomatic level access vanished without clearance. He snorts. Diplomatic access, he repeats, as if tasting something sour. She shrugs. Call it what you like. I call it inconvenience. For you. The gamble is brutal in its simplicity. She is betting that his fear of being wrong outweighs his desire to be right. The officer turns away, pacing now. Faster, less controlled. This is no longer an interrogation. It's a risk assessment. Christine watches him closely. She knows this type. He is not a sadist. He is not sloppy. He is ambitious, which makes him dangerous, but also predictable. Ambitious men hate uncertainty. Names, he snaps suddenly. If you're so valuable, give me names. Christine meets his gaze. I don't carry names, she says. That would be careless. Then you carry nothing. She shakes her head. I carry messages, roots, patterns, things you don't want me to forget. He stops, slowly turns. That sounds like a threat. It's an insurance policy. Another silence. He hates this. She can feel it. Every second she survives makes her harder to erase cleanly. He walks to the desk and picks up a folder. Her folder. Thumbs through it. Pauses. You're Polish, he says. That alone is reason enough. Christine's jaw tightens, but only for a fraction of a second. He doesn't see it. Yes, she replies. Which means, if I disappear, the wrong people may assume the wrong motive. He looks up sharply. Explain. She doesn't. Not directly. She lets implication do the damage. She lets him imagine foreign embassies, neutral governments, allies who pretend not to be involved, but are watching. Her silk stockings are still visible, still out of place, still whispering the same impossible question. Why her? The officer rubs his temples. He is no longer enjoying this. Finally, he does the one thing Christine needs him to do. He reaches for the telephone. The room freezes. A phone call is not mercy. A phone call is danger, because it introduces variables she cannot control. A superior might be cautious, or ruthless, or bored enough to sign off on an execution just to clear his desk. The officer dials. Christine keeps her breathing steady. She focuses on stillness. Stillness makes people project confidence where there may be none. Yes, he says into the receiver. I have a detainee. Female. Claims external importance. A pause. A response she cannot hear. She's unusual, he adds. Christine almost smiles. Almost. The call drags on. The officer's posture shifts from dominant to defensive. He glances at her more than once now, as if she has become an active factor rather than an object. At last, he slams the receiver down. You're being transferred, he says flatly. Not released, not executed, transferred. It's not freedom, but it's survival. Christine exhales silently. She knows better than to celebrate. Transfers can lead to graves as easily as doors. As guards move to escort her, the officer hesitates. You're gambling with your life, he says, almost grudgingly. She meets his eyes. So are you. That is the truth of it. He could still order her shot, still make her vanish. But now, doing so would feel like a decision, one that might haunt him. As she is led away, Christine feels the weight of eyes on her back. She has not won. She has merely delayed the end. And delay is everything. Because delay creates opportunity. Opportunity creates chaos. And chaos is where resistance survives. The corridor smells of disinfectant and fear. Boots echo. Doors slam somewhere far away. Christine walks steadily. Silk stockings hidden now beneath rough handling and hurried steps. But their effect lingers in the mind of a man who chose caution over certainty. Yet even as she moves forward, she knows something else. If she survives this transfer, she will not be safe, because people like her are never truly released. They are simply allowed to keep running until the next door closes, and somewhere ahead, another officer will ask another question, and she will have to bet her life again on how afraid he is of being wrong. Transfers are the gray zone between life and death. No cheers, no relief, just movement. Files changing hands, orders stamped, responsibility passed like a burden no one wants to carry. For Christine Granville, the journey out of the interrogation room is not an escape. It is a narrowing corridor of possibilities. The vehicle rattles over broken roads. Guards say little. She watches reflections in the window glass, memorizing faces the way others memorize prayers. Because if she survives this, she will need to remember who might recognize her later. The gamble she made, the silk stockings, the implication of consequence, has worked just enough. She is no longer disposable. She is inconvenient. And in the machinery of occupation, inconvenience can buy time. Time is everything. Records show that Christine's audacity did not end with this moment. Again and again, she used the enemy's own caution against them, slipping through cracks created by doubt, by bureaucracy, by men unwilling to risk blame. She returned to the work she did best, connecting people who were meant to be isolated. In France, in particular, her reputation grew quietly. She moved between resistance groups that barely trusted one another, carrying messages, arranging escapes, smoothing tensions. Where others saw chaos, she saw patterns. Where others saw fear, she saw leverage. And then came one of the most remarkable acts of her wartime life. In 1944, with the German grip weakening but still deadly, Christine was tasked with something almost impossible: negotiating the release of imprisoned resistance fighters from the Gestapo itself. Not by force, not by rescue, by persuasion. She walked into enemy territory again, this time armed not with a bluff, but with credibility earned through survival. She spoke to German officers about reprisals, about advancing Allied lines, about what would happen after the war. She made them see a future in which cooperation might look better on paper than obedience. It worked. Dozens of prisoners walked free, not because the Gestapo found mercy, but because Christine made calculation feel safer than cruelty. This is the payoff that history often misses. Heroism is imagined as explosions and gunfire. But Christine's victories came in quiet rooms, with measured voices and eyes that never blinked first. And yet, freedom was never clean. Every success tightened the noose in other ways. Her name circulated. Her face became familiar. Survival bred recognition, and recognition is poison for spies. Each mission carried the weight of the last. When the war finally ended, when Europe staggered out of rubble and into uneasy peace, Christine Granville expected, if not gratitude, then at least understanding. What she found instead was silence. The world moved on. Governments closed files. Heroes without uniforms were politely forgotten. The skills that kept her alive in war had no place in peacetime. She drifted, worked small jobs, faded from the headlines she never wanted anyway. And then, cruelly, fate delivered its final irony. In 1952, years after surviving the Gestapo, the mountains, the interrogations, Christine Granville was murdered in London. Not by an empire, not by ideology, but by a rejected admirer. A knife in a hotel corridor ended the life of a woman who had faced death with composure so many times before. It is not a fair ending, but history rarely is. What remains is the truth behind the legend. That silk stockings were never the point. They were a symbol of something far more dangerous. A mind that understood how power thinks and how fear can be turned inside out. Christine Granville did not defeat the Gestapo with strength. She defeated them with understanding. Understanding that the most dangerous thing you can make your enemy feel is responsible. And yet, even now, her story is incomplete. Because for every Christine Granville we remember, there are dozens of women whose names were never written down, whose bluffs, bargains, and quiet bravery dissolved into the paperwork of history. Their wars were fought in rooms without witnesses. Their weapons were details no one thought to fear. And their victories, fragile, temporary, human, changed the course of lives we will never know. In the final part, we will step back from the legend and ask the question that matters most. What do we owe the heroes who survived the war, but were never truly allowed to live after it? There is a myth we like to tell about war, that when the guns fall silent, the story ends. That survival itself is a kind of reward. That heroes step into the light and are met with gratitude, purpose, and peace. Christine Granville's life tells us something far less comforting. Because surviving a war does not mean escaping it. When the fighting stopped, Christina Skarbek was no longer a weapon anyone needed. The qualities that made her invaluable in occupied Europe, her nerve, her independence, her refusal to submit, became inconvenient in peacetime Britain. Files were sealed. Commendations were minimal. The world that had once relied on her ability to walk into danger now preferred quiet obedience. She had been too visible to vanish completely, too unofficial to belong anywhere. This is the hidden cost paid by many of the war's most effective agents, especially women. They did not fit the post-war image of heroism. No parades, no statues, just polite acknowledgments and closed doors. Christine took work as a ship stewardess. Later, a hotel clerk. Jobs that demanded politeness, anonymity, and silence. The opposite of the world she had mastered. The woman who once stared down Gestapo officers now smiled at guests who would never know what she had done to survive. And then came the end that history still struggles to accept. In 1952, in a modest London hotel, Christine Granville was stabbed to death by a man obsessed with her. Someone she had tried to avoid, someone who mistook kindness for promise. After all the interrogations, the crossings, the bluffs that had saved dozens of lives, she was killed not by tyranny, but by a private, senseless violence. It feels obscene, almost wrong, but it forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. War does not distribute justice. It distributes trauma and then moves on. So why does her story matter now? Because Christine's silk stockings were never about deception alone. They were about agency, about refusing to be reduced to what the enemy expected. She understood something that remains true in every conflict. Power is rarely absolute. Authority is often afraid. And courage does not always roar. It sometimes whispers the one sentence that makes a killer hesitate. Christine Granville did not change the war alone, but she changed outcomes. She saved lives not with force, but with timing, empathy, and nerve. She made men who believed themselves untouchable feel accountable, and that is a form of heroism we must remember, lest we forget the women whose battlegrounds were rooms without witnesses. Lest we forget the spies who survived by understanding human weakness better than their enemies. Lest we forget that history is shaped not only by those who command armies, but by those who walk into danger armed with nothing but insight and resolve. If this story stayed with you, then consider this. Somewhere in the shadows of the Second World War, another woman made another impossible choice. She picked the right words. She read the room correctly. She lived just long enough to change someone else's fate. Her name may never be written down, but her courage is still there, woven into the silence between official records. And in the next story, we will uncover one of those forgotten names. Another woman, another gamble, Another moment where hesitation meant survival. Because history remembers battles, but it is time we remember the people who won them without ever being seen.